So, as we saw in the last lesson, once the banks were formed and people started depositing their coins with the bank would keep all the money in a safe box and give back to the person who had deposited their money some IOU, some pieces of paper saying that this piece of paper could be exchanged at any moment in time for the coins that this person had deposited in the bank account. Now, because it was easier to walk around with these IOUs and the bank was trusted by people, instead of then, for example, if I want to buy something from you and I exchange it for my bank IOU, okay, you could then take that to the bank and exchange it for coins. But people found it easier and more comfortable actually to just exchange these IOUs between each other. Then there was no need to actually go to the bank and get the coins out. You could leave the coins where they were. Okay, you didn't have to carry them around with you. All you had to carry around was the bank IOU, which was much lighter, much easier to exchange. And so people started using those instead of the coins. Now, what happened then, of course, is that the bankers realized that they had vaults and safe boxes full of coins that were doing absolutely nothing. So, as good bankers do, constantly thinking about the way that they could make money. Now, obviously, they could make money with the money that they have. So what the banks started to do was take these coins that they had saved away and start lending them out to people at interest. So let's say you needed £100. You could go to the bank and say, look, I need to borrow £100. And the bank would say, well, it just so happens I've got a load of coins here doing nothing. Okay, so they would take £100 coins, give them to the person and say, yeah, and in exchange, all you have to do is give me back £110. As we all know, this is interest. This is what the banks charge us when they lend us money, okay? And the excuse for interest is that's the money they make for doing their job. You know, that's the commission that they charge for lending you that money. Now, we're so used to that idea that nobody questions it. We sort of take it as writ that that's something that the banks can do and it's okay. But if you think about it, if you take that idea and run with it and see where it goes, actually, it's probably the worst thing in the world that interest can be charged on money lent. Why? Because, and I'm going to simplify it down as simple as I can, okay? Let's say that there only exist £100 in existence, okay? And I go to the bank and say, look, I would like you to lend me £100. And the bank says, yeah, of course, I've got £100 here. Here you go. They give me £100. But in a year's time, when you have to give us the money back, we're going to be charging you 10% interest. So that means that when you give it back to us in a year, you'll have to give us £110. Okay, fair enough. It sounds all right, doesn't it? You know, and we agree to it. Sounds fair enough. You know, it's, well, the bank's lending us the money. You know, so they need to make something, don't they? But the fatal flaw in the plan is the fact that there are only £100. You know, we've just stipulated the fact that there are only £100. So how am I going to give the bank back the £110 now that I owe them? Because those £10 that I have to give them back in interest don't exist. You see, I'm onto a loser right from the beginning. As soon as I ask to borrow the money from the bank, I am immediately £10 indebted to them for life, in a debt that I am unable to pay, ever, because the money doesn't exist. So let me extend that example a little more. Okay. Let's say now that there are £100 in the whole world, okay? And there are 10 people. And each of these 10 people goes to the bank and says, I need a loan of £10. Can you give me £10? And the bank says to each and every one of them, yeah, of course, yeah. Here's the £10. In a year's time, it's 10% interest. So in a year's time, you just give me back £11. All right, now let's say that one of the guys has a tomato farm, another guy has a chicken farm, another guy has a dairy farm, and they want the money to make improvements. Now, you're going to think, as many people do, oh, well, that's fine, because, you know, the guy that grows the tomatoes, what he can do is he can use those £10 to improve his tomato farm. And then from the sale of the tomatoes, he can make back the £10 plus the extra pound that he owes, you know. So this is the system that we live in now, and that's great. You know, you can see it, you can see it, but we still have the same problem that there's only £100. So even if the guy who plants the tomatoes, even if he manages to make back the £10 and selling the tomatoes makes back the extra pound to pay back, that extra pound has had to come from one of the other 9 people. Which means that, all right, he paid his back, but somebody now, instead of only having £10 to pay back and never being able to pay the £11, actually there's only got £9 now. You see? So when we have a system like this, which charging interest on money is actually called usury, okay? That's the technical term for it. Although nowadays usury is only used if you're charging interest on money which goes above the legal limit stipulated, which should be 0, because, you know, if the banks aren't going to print the money to pay the interest, which they don't do, we will forever be indebted to them. Because what does the bank say? Oh, well, you know, we will give you the loan backed by the value of your house, for example. Yeah. So if you can't pay, then we just keep your house. But you're never going to be able to pay. Do you understand that? I mean, this is the thing about the corruption of the system that we have right now. They lend you money knowing that you will never be able to pay it back. It will never get paid back. And if you manage to pay it back, then that means that somebody else can't. Yeah, I mean, that's how the system works. They don't print the money to pay the interest. So there's never enough money circulating to pay back to the bank what everybody owes. And that's how the banks end up taking your house, taking your land, it's a corrupt system where they only win. Because you always have to pay back to the bank more than the money that's actually in circulation. That's how disgusting the system is. And I think it's important that we know this, okay? Charging interest on money is detrimental to the population. And it's something that happens when banking is in private hands, which it is at the minute, okay? So anyway, that's what happened once the banks started making money from money, okay? And it's a system that has perpetuated to the modern day era, but it's got worse, and we'll go into it as we get onto the further lessons. But the next lesson, we're going to look at the gold standard and why we don't use it anymore, and what system we're using in its place, which is the fiat system, and how that works, okay? Bye-bye.